You know how Trump says they're not just coming after me, they're coming after you too. I'm just standing in their way.
Yeah.
Iton Haim, we brought you this story when he rose to some prominence last year. Iton Haim is 34 years old, beginning of his career as a surgeon. He and his wife are expecting their first child. And now he's facing a 4-count federal felony indictment for blowing the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital, where he worked while he was a resident. He discovered the hospital was secretly continuing gender transition treatments on minors, including hormonal intervention on patients as young as 11 years old, after publicly declaring that it would no longer provide such services. And he went to Chris Rufo, conservative journalist, Manhattan Institute, to provide him the information so he could break the story. Rufo published an expose about what Texas Children's Hospital was doing, despite what they were saying publicly, and including pressure from Governor Abbott and the Texas Attorney General as well, when it was reported that they were continuing these procedures. The Texas legislature moved to ban them subsequent to the report. Before giving Rufo evidence that puberty blockers were still being surgically implanted in young patients, Haim made sure the patients' names and other identifying information were redacted to both protect patient privacy and himself from violating the law known as HIPAA, which protects individual patient identities while also allowing various uses for medical information. That story was that Rufo published was done so on May 16th of last year. That's when the Texas legislature subsequently voted to ban the gender transition of minors. On June 23rd of last year, the day Haim was to graduate from his residency, 2 federal agents from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services showed up to his house to have a chat. Haim's wife, who is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Texas, which is a different division of the U.S. Attorney's Office than the one that has indicted her husband, advised him not to talk. Haim was indicted last week, but as of this writing by Emily Yoffe over at Free Press, as of this writing, he and his attorneys don't yet know the precise nature of the charges.
Oh, sound familiar?
Right?
Very Trump-esque.
Another parallel. One of his lawyers, Mark Little, told the Free Press it's very unusual to bring felony charges for an alleged HIPAA violation unless there's a significant underlying crime, such as a hospital clerk selling a celebrity's medical records. He said the indictment of Haim seems politically motivated, his attorney saying, quote, the government is entering into the town square on the culture wars and didn't like what Iton had to say. I think they're looking to make an example of him. Haim, on the charges he is now facing, as he's at the beginning of his medical career, as they're expecting their first child, he and his wife, said, no regrets about blowing the whistle. If we don't fight back, what world are we delivering our children into? Yeah. The future of America depends on the likes of Iton Haim. There's no question about it. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Jill Simons. She is the executive director of the American College of Pediatricians, which made their own stand recently, as we discussed on Monday this week. Dr. Simons, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, first, the plight of Dr. Haim. Do you have comment on that?
You know, I speak to doctors all the time that have been reprimanded, threatened, or who have even been fired for something as simple as using the wrong pronouns that, you know, their hospital has deemed appropriate. So doctors are under incredible pressure to conform. And, you know, when these medical institutions say that there's a consensus, it is because a great majority of them are just simply afraid to speak out.
And so the American College of Pediatricians is speaking out as a group and enlisting doctors around the country to speak with them. this Doctors Protecting Children Declaration. Tell us about that.
Well, the American College of Pediatricians has been sounding the alarm for years on this, and we also have several other great groups working to protect children from these harms, and we've been all speaking out somewhat individually over the years, and we've been pushed to the side, dismissed, called fringe groups, and so we came together. Well, it's been in the works for a few months, but we really mobilized over the last couple of months and said, enough. We have to come together in one unified voice so that this is clear, not just to the medical organizations, but to the people of America, to the parents out there, that we're going to stand up and protect your children from this, that we do not go along with these harmful protocols.
Well, and this we were talking about the other day. This strikes us very much like the Great Barrington Declaration, and you have all those sort of equally credentialed medical experts saying very different things, and so let's talk about what we know about the science of this. So, for example, what is the latest and greatest understanding scientifically of the impact on puberty blockers or the impact on gender transition surgery for young people who think that they are in the wrong body?
The short answer is these have not been proven to help, and there's evidence that they're doing harm. I would direct people to the most recent thorough review, the Cass review that was done in England. Dr. Hilary Cass, a pediatrician, well-respected, and she spent several years, about 4 years, creating this report, and she investigated, the research. They even commissioned some of their own research through the University of York. They talked to just parents, kids, adolescents, doctors, counselors, everyone involved with this issue. And her report is pretty clear, and it lays out the research stating that there is no evidence that these so-called gender-affirming cares help. She even went so far as to say, and this is important, that social affirmation, that is, switching a child's pronouns or letting them, play the role in the opposite sex, is not benign. They know that when children are affirmed, so-called affirmed in this way, that a majority of them go on to puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, versus if children are just left to go through natural puberty and they're supported through that, as difficult as it may be for these children, that the great majority of them will desist, or they will feel comfortable with their biological sex. So that's pretty alarming. There's a recent study that came out that said over 71%, but we have studies that show as high as 90% of children with gender dysphoria will grow out of this and be comfortable with their biological sex.
Do you know of any gender-altering surgeries that were performed without parental consent?
I don't have any knowledge of specific cases. The news is certainly flooded with stories of these procedures being done on minors, variety of procedures.
So the professional disagreements, here in Chicago, we have Lurie's Children's Hospital, which is a strong advocate of all this, all puberty blockers and gender transition surgeries and all that stuff, perhaps arguably in part because of the financing they received from the Pritzker family. And that leads me to my question, which is what is the source or sources of the professional disagreements between you and other members of the American College of Pediatricians and other signatories to this declaration, Doctors Protecting Children Declaration? Is it because sort of like what we saw during COVID, you don't want the money spigot to be turned off? Is it ideological politics with some doctors, or some combination of the two, something else?
It's a very good question, and a lot of smart people are scratching their heads saying, how did we get to this point? Right. And there's I'm sure there's many components to how we got here, and I could theorize and talk about that all day long. But I think the main focus is just to look forward and to do what's right, follow the science, get back to the research, and, get rid of this fear mongering that's happening, this suppression of truth that's happening, and let doctors speak out truthfully, like they have for all ages. I mean, we've always been able to come together and discuss medicine and research and disagree, and then, redo the way we treat people. So why this is being treated any different is really frustrating to a lot of us. So we're moving forward, and I have confidence in my colleagues. I think our leadership, not only the American College of Pediatricians, but the other co-signers on this declaration, our leadership has allowed physicians to step off the sidelines and to not be afraid to speak up, because we do have the majority on our side, and I think this is the start of the tipping point.
The declaration, doctorsprotectingchildren.org to sign the declaration, particularly if you're a doctor or medical professional, that would be helpful. Dr. Jill Simons, Executive Director of the American College of Pediatricians, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Conveyors keep your products moving, but when they break down, it can cost your company time and money. If you need help with conveyors, call a company that has the expertise and capability to help.
Hi, I'm Dave Van Camp, president of Vans Industrial. I've got over 40 years of personal experience in dealing with conveyors and their related parts. At Vans, we install and maintain all types of conveyors, including screw conveyors, belt conveyors,